Thank you, Lynn. Welcome to an international meeting for worship. We're always around the States, but Donna's in Guatemala and Sylvia and Dan are in Belize. So we've now gone international for a little while. Are there announcements that need to be made?
This is not exactly an announcement of an upcoming event, but I just want Megan to know that if I leave early, it's not because I'm trying to escape her message. It's just that our minister at Valley Mills, and you know I play there every Sunday, our minister and her family are in Ireland, and we have a guest today. And Myron Shavas, and he is guest minister, and I need to be there early to make sure everything is set up and ready for the service. So if I leave early, Megan, it's not anything to do with your message.
Thank you. I wish you well with your visitor.
Okay. And he is from Bolivia. So we're really international this morning.
Are there joys or concerns to share?
Nancy's going back to school tomorrow.
Is that a joy?
Absolutely. She's looking forward to it.
Well, the joy here is that the sun's out. I've been seeing the sun for a while. So. Well, I know we have many things on our hearts, and we're praying for friends who are traveling around the U.S. and abroad, and everything that's going on in the news right now, which is troubling. So as we enter worship, let's lift them all to God in prayer and seek that which is eternal. Focus on it. Megan's our worship leader this morning, and she will speak as she feels led out of the silence.
So today, getting ready for today was a very interesting experience for someone who was devoted to an unprogrammed meeting. And I gave it a lot of thought about, I had actually given a lot of thought about whether or not it was even appropriate for me to give a message in this way. Because in my way of looking at how worship unfolds for me, it's that I wait on God, and God will reveal himself to me, and I absolutely am not sufficiently disciplined to have him reveal himself to me. at 10 o'clock in the morning on, or 9 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. In fact, it's pretty intermittent. So, I was concerned that I would not um, be able to give a message worthy of the name, and also that that uh, maybe it was inconsistent of me to consider it. But I decided that that petty consistency thing was a little problem, and that I'm definitely not an angel on head to pin kind of person who thinks um, who sees it only that I have to have an exact and precise definition of things that I will then apply to all situations. So while I was thinking about about what it was that I would talk about, I started to look at Pendle Hill pamphlets, and one of my earliest ones on my little nook here is from Gerald Hurd, who I don't even really know if he ever became a friend. He was, and this pamphlet is from the 1930s. It's number 7. So, and he had written a pamphlet that I liked very much on prayer. So I thought I had never really gotten into this particular one. And having gotten into it, there's a lot of it that I discard. But one of the things that he talked about was that, what is it that we're doing? What do we offer to people? And when we look at contemporary friends and when we look at original friends, um, what does that have to say about how we're seeking God and finding God corporately? Granted that a quaint and honored peculiarness in worship and a wide activity in social service are considerable, yet are they enough in a world where the best are desperately anxious to know whether the ideal can be contemporarily real, and the rest believe that social service is a neutral force which can serve Caesar as well as it can serve God? Quakerism is asking itself these questions. And he talks about how you know at, in its very early stages, Quakerism was like a fever and it kind of took over. And there were thousands of people gathering under trees and being willing to be locked up, to have their lives disrupted so that they could practice this particular, peculiar approach to God. And they, and in that time, they realized that the direct experience of God was the most powerful thing that could happen to them. And that it did not require sacraments or rituals. And that in fact, sacraments and rituals could interfere with a direct experience of God. You know, I had a friend when in my 20s and 30s, who was a member of Wealthy Friends Meeting, who went down and held a sign in protest in front of, I think it was the Cambridge location of Lincoln Labs, where they do the particle accelerator thing, and they create weapons. And he would stand out there and get arrested every week until his doctor told him he had to stop. I don't know anybody else, not too many other people, too many other friends who've been willing to go where Bob Hilligus went. And I think about, how can we now have that same urgency which allows us to be uncomfortable, to give up our comforts in order to be alive to the Spirit of God every day, all day, or as much as we can achieve being human. Over time, we've created structures and bodies and, um, schisms and ideas about reading out and reading in and forgetting the whole thing. So you look at it and you think, I hope that the sound of Dick shoveling the 2 inches of snow out there is not as distracting to you as it is to me. But if you hear it, but but when I look at how it is that we're going to get to a place how I'm going to get to there, because I don't know about anybody else. I'm just not trying to lay anything on anybody else. How could such a thing be when we've got buildings and employees and tracks that we're printing out and plans? And does that all interfere, or can it be possibly part of the way in which we connect to God? So, and I will tell you, by the way, parenthetically, which I meant to say at the beginning, I have not written anything out which is not something I'm capable of doing. And I've done a lot of speaking over the years. I'm not doing this anything like that, because I feel as though it's important that as I talk, that I leave the space for God to enter, because hopefully he's going to do better if he gets to me than I'm going to do on my own. So, um, one of the things, and I was particularly struck by all this concern that I've had lately about whether or not we're going to be able to maintain those structures and those, New England Yearly Meeting is having a financial crisis. Friends General Council, FGC had its own crisis. FUM is clearly in grave difficulties. And maybe it's because we're not generous, but maybe it's because some of these things don't speak to our condition. They haven't either been explained well enough to us, or they haven't been, or to other people, um, or what the endeavors um, are not connecting to that of God in each of us enough so that we can give until it hurts. So, these things have been on my mind for some time about how it is. And I will tell you that of my own personal experience in my own meeting, we have a very beautiful building, sort of an oldish kind of building, that we added a new meeting house on the side of. Meeting room, we have a pretty good sized meeting room, and, not like a Catholic church or anything, but, good size. And there are a number of people, I feel as though many people are very attached to the building, and that maintaining the building has become an important feature to a number of people. And I'm not saying we shouldn't maintain the building, but I don't think we should be attached to the building, because it's just one of many places where God is and where we could find God and be in community. So I think, as I say, these things have been on my mind for quite a while. And I want to tell you a little bit about my whole other faith community and how that interacts with what I'm thinking about right now. And while I don't need to get into the details of how it is I am, of how I came to be qualified to be in my other life, I'm a member of a 12-step community, and specifically Al-Anon program for friends and family of alcoholics. And and I was profoundly affected by alcoholism as a child. We could just leave it at that. One of the things that's so striking is I can remember walking into my first meeting, and it's a little conference room, kind of grubby, with a skeleton hanging in a closet in the corner, and just, five or six ordinary jamokes hanging around a table. And yet, by the time I was through that time that the length of that meeting, I thought I am in a spiritual home. And that room I went to every single week until from, I don't know, the mid 1990s until the pandemic. And and the people changed and the tenor changed. We read different things, we did different things, we were different people. Things changed over time, but there was one thing that was constant, and that God was in that room. I'm just going to read a little bit. This is the thing you can't do on programming, read out loud. So taking full advantage of this opportunity. So this is from Bill's story. And he talks, of course, at some great length about how what happened and how about his drinking. But we won't necessarily go into that. So he's in the hospital. And he was talking about a friend came to visit him, to talk to him about how he had become sober himself. And I think this is where the Oxford, the Oxford types, I forget, the Oxford Club or what have you, was involved. But this is, I had believed in a power greater than myself. I had often pondered these things. I was not an atheist. Few people really are. For that means a blind faith in the strange proposition that this universe originated in a cipher and aimlessly rushes nowhere. But with the ministers and world's religions, I parted right there. When they talked of a God personal to me who was love, superhuman strength and direction, I became irritated, and my mind snapped shut against such a theory. If there was a devil, he seemed the boss universal, and he certainly had me. But my friend sat before me, and he made the point-blank declaration that God had done for him what he could not do for himself. His human will had failed. His doctors pronounced him incurable. Society was about to lock him up. I saw that my friend was much more than inwardly reorganized. He was on a different footing. His roots grasped at a new soil. And he suggested what then seemed like a novel idea. Why don't you choose your own conception of God? And it was only a matter, that statement hit me hard. It melted the icy intellectual mountain in whose shadow I had lived and shivered many years. I stood in the sunlight at last. It was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself. Nothing more was required of me to make my beginning. There I humbly offered myself to God as I then understood him, to do with me as he would. I placed myself unreservedly under his care and direction. I admitted for the first time that of myself I was nothing. Without him I was lost. I ruthlessly faced my sins and became willing to have my newfound friend take them away root and branch. I have not had a drink since. So that, and then he goes and finds it, and then he realizes that he can't, that it's nothing unless he can find someone else. And he's on that business trip, and he goes, he calls around to hospitals, I think, and asks, is there a hopeless alcoholic that I could visit? And he calls around and he finds Dr. Bob, and he goes to visit Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob is alcoholic number 2. And he was desperate. If he did not find another alcoholic to talk to, he was going to drink. He's standing outside the bar at the phone, trying to find a person to talk to, someone that he can help and who can help him. And that's how the society grew. And at one point, there was a whole thing about how it was that, I don't know, Rockefeller or some Carnegie, I can't remember, some rich person was going to give them a very large sum of money. And they were going to become a real organization. And they didn't get that money. And it was like God stepped in and made sure this isn't going to go wrong from their perspective. That's their way of thinking about it. And that is that you cannot, you can't run this as if it's about the buildings. In fact, when Al-Anon bought a building, it was hugely controversial. Everyone was very excited and upset that they went out and bought real estate because that is just not what we do here. We're all under a tree doing our thing, renting $25 a month rooms from churches, and we're not those people. But when you have to publish and do things, I guess they had to. And I don't really think that buying that particular property made all the difference in the world. But what does make a difference is that anybody can do it. You can go down, you say, listen, I've got a book here, put it in the bulletin, we're gonna have a meeting, you put it out there, anybody can come, and they show up and they do their thing. And you can do it any way you want, as long as you don't, but then there are certain strictures, certain things you can't do. But and one of them is you can't talk about religion. You can talk about your God and your relationship with God, but you can't talk about your religion. And that is a very helpful thought that at this point, all I'm talking about is my direct experience with the Spirit and what I'm doing in my life, keeping the focus on myself, saying, this is how I'm going to get better. And that's all about how I'm going to have a direct relationship with God. And at times, God speaks to me through other people. And those other people are the people who are there who came to the rooms, who I can call day or night, who would come to me in the hospital. They might not know my last name and they might have a little difficulty finding me, but they will find me because that's what it's all about. It's like a community that in some ways I have never had any other experience like it. So then I think, well, what has that got to do with Quakerism? Just because I do think I had to wrap up about now. And I think that we can't say, oh, yes, we're going to do it just like anybody else does it. But I think what I've learned from this meeting in particular has been how much it matters. What we bring to the table is how much we love each other and love God. And I have not met you all face to face, many of you not so. And yet I have a very strong connection to you. And I know that if I were to call Lynn up at midnight and say, I need to talk to you, something horrible happened, I wouldn't do it if I didn't really have to. But you know what I mean? I know that you're there for me and that I would be delighted to be there for you. And that we're all seeking God in our own in different ways. And that and this is living proof. You don't need the building. You don't need the infrastructure. You don't need a lot. You don't need the sacraments. You don't need the ritual. You don't need any of it. What you need is to have the direct experience with God and to do it in fellowship of others who will help you stay on the straight and narrow. So, not the most polished message you've ever had, and certainly not the most polished message I've ever given. But I feel it strongly that this is the only way we're going to find God is to go looking for him directly.
Thank you, Megan and Lynn, for your ministry offerings this morning. We know some folks have to leave for other obligations. We bid you Godspeed and blessings on your week. And for those who can stay, we will continue with unprogrammed worship.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Megan.
Megan.
Thank you, Lynn.
Megan.
I've been going to this men's group for a couple of years, and I understand what Megan says about God being in these groups. They are evangelicals. It was white evangelicals, actually. But there's a connection that clearly God is there. And there's this African American man who shows up. He's a minister. And I admired that strength and courage that he would come and express his thoughts. And this group does have a tendency to bend towards becoming a national religion. And I ended up believing because of that. But I've been following this African American man and his other things that he does, and we've become quite close, at least in talking about our thoughts about God. The other day, he posted on Facebook about being a people pleaser. And it struck me. Why do we always make people pleasers a negative? Isn't it coming from the God within? Are we so scared of that God within that we have to push it away? I've been thinking about this for a good week since he did that. And Megan, you brought in a lot of that thought back into me, because what we're really doing when we push it away is we're taking care of our building. That we are afraid that someone's breaking in or doing something that we don't want. But to be someone who wants to please you, and we don't talk about it, we actually make it a negative, is so destructive. If we can see that someone's trying to please us, I don't think it's right to say, stop. I would ask, what's calling you? I know that when I am a people pleaser, and I struggle with this, there's shame in it at times. It hurts when people reject you. But how do you stop? Or should you stop? Because I feel when I'm trying to be a person making someone feel better about themselves, that it is coming from a God within. So I told him in his Facebook, I said, if they don't listen to you, you should just shake the dust off your sandals and move on. Because there are people who need you. And that it's not a bad thing. Now, I don't know if that's right, but those are my thoughts. I love all you guys. It's amazing that the spirit comes through this monitor. It absolutely amazes me. I've never met any of you besides this monitor. And yet, we allow each other to please each other. And I thank you so much, Megan, for that talk. It really gave me a different avenue to look.
Some days it's difficult for me to organize my thoughts on cue at the beginning, but there are three things that I would like to share with you. First of all, it's a joy that Alberta, daughter-in-law Cindy's mom, improved enough this past week from having the flu and pneumonia at the same time that she was able to come home from the hospital yesterday, which is very amazing because Alberta's health is very, very fragile. And that was a wonderful thing. Secondly, I was at Norma's wedding, and I can tell you that with two ministers, she was both well married and married well. Her husband, Marion, was a wonderful man whose career was an elementary school teacher. And I've always thought that the kids that had him in elementary school were very, very fortunate, because male elementary teachers are few and far between. The third thing is baptism. Some people think baptism, whether it's by water or by spirit, is the end, and that's what gets you into heaven. I would say it's just the opposite. Your baptism, whether by water or by spirit, is just the beginning of a lifelong journey to find your place in the world and how you react to the world and with the world. And so I see it as not a short-term fix, but a long-term process that allows you to explore where it is you're going and who you are as a person.
Thank you, Megan, for your message. Just wanted to say how important that message was. Started attending ACA, which is Adult Children of Alcoholics, in 2014. And I really love the community. I was there for about 6 years until the pandemic. And unfortunately, the pandemic really interrupted the meetings and I never returned. But it was the most life-affirming and truly spiritual place for me. I think it saved my life. So those meetings are incredible. And I can see how my Quaker faith and that meeting, they affirm each other in terms of the structure, and it does work really well together. So I'm blessed to have both meetings, but I need to go back to my ACA meeting because it's incredibly powerful. So thank you for the message.
If friends' hearts are clear, we can close meeting for worship.
Would it be okay if I gave a little bit of the closing from an
Sure.
Al-Anon meeting?
Yes.
A few special words to those of you who haven't been with us long. Whatever your problems, there are those among us who have had them too. You will find that there is no difficulty too great to be lessened and no unhappiness to be too great to be lightened. We're not perfect. We may not show the warmth we have in our hearts for you. After a while, you'll come to realize that although you may not like all of us, you'll love us in a very special way, the same way we already love you. Talk to one another, reason things out, but let there be no gossip or criticism of one another. Instead, let the understanding, love, and peace of the program grow in you one day at a time. Will all who care to join me in closing with a serenity prayer? God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Good ending.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Well, it's good to see you all. I was especially happy to see my wife.
I love her sweater. She's great, but I love her sweater.
I like the cat.
Yeah.
Ooh, very pretty, Donna.
Yeah. Oh, you're muted.